Welcome to Unlocking Passion. Men Report. Let's begin with a new story. Thomas Becker stood on the empty plot of land under the burning Thai sun and stared at the piece of earth that had cost him 700,000 euros. The soil was yellow-brown, cracked open by weeks of drought. Weeds pushed through in scattered clumps. A rusted Pepsi sign leaned against a concrete post that served no purpose. Behind him, the ocean glittered mockingly. The same ocean he had imagined watching from the balcony of the guest house he had believed he was going to build. The guest house that would never exist. In his hand, he held a folder filled with documents, permits, construction plans, contracts, bank transfer receipts, all forged, all worthless. The official at the provincial office had looked at him that morning with something between pity and irritation when Tom presented the papers. "This is not a real permit," the official had said in broken English, handing the documents back as if they were contaminated. "This land is not for sale. Government property. You have a problem, sir." A big problem. Tom was 64 years old. He had worked for 40 years to build a small manufacturing company from nothing. He had survived recessions and competition, sacrificed weekends and holidays, and watched his marriage collapse under the weight of ambition and exhaustion. He had sold everything, the company, the house in Stuttgart, his car, and converted everything into cash, and come to Thailand in pursuit of a dream of peace and warmth, and perhaps, just perhaps, love in his final years. And now, in less than 8 months, everything was gone. Every euro, every sacrifice, every hour of those 40 years had been erased. Somewhere in Thailand, a 29-year-old woman named Nacha was probably laughing. Or perhaps she was not thinking about him at all. Perhaps he had already been forgotten, just another name in a book full of broken foreign men who had believed her smile, her promises, and her tears. Tom closed his eyes against the sun and felt something inside him break. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, completely, like a cable snapping deep underwater where no one could hear it. This is the story of how Thomas Becker lost everything. If you enjoy the stories I create, please subscribe to the channel. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me find time for these videos, despite my full-time job. Thank you for being here. Thomas Becker was not a man inclined toward impulsive decisions. For 4 decades, he had been the opposite. Methodical, careful, disciplined. He had built his manufacturing company, Becker Precision Parts, from a single workshop in Stuttgart-Burfen in 1983 and slowly expanded it into a medium-sized operation with 32 employees. They manufactured specialized parts for automotive suppliers. Nothing glamorous, but essential, precise work that required attention to detail and consistency. Tom had dedicated his life to that business. 60-hour weeks were normal, and 70-hour weeks during busy periods. He had learned every aspect of the operation: machining, quality control, supply chain management, and customer relationships. His employees respected him because he never asked them to do anything he would not do himself. He worked on the production floor when staff were short. He stayed late to solve problems. He took pride in delivering perfect parts on time, every time. But that devotion came at a cost. His marriage to Anki had slowly broken under the weight of his absence. They had married young, at 20, full of hope and plans. But as the company grew, Tom was home less and less. Evening conversations became rare. Vacations were interrupted by work calls. When Anki wanted to talk about their future, about perhaps having children, Tom would say, "Soon. Just let me get through this contract," or "Next year will be better." But next year never was. They divorced in 2015 after 30 years of marriage. It was civil, quiet, and sad. No screaming arguments, no dramatic betrayals, just two people who had slowly become strangers living in the same house. Anke got the house. Tom kept the business and moved into a small apartment near the workshop. He told himself it was fine, that he would focus on work, that success would be enough. But at night, lying alone in that apartment, he felt an emptiness he could not name. By 2022, Tom was 63 and exhausted. The business was stable, but no longer growing. The automotive industry was changing. Electric vehicles, new suppliers, shifting markets. His competitors were younger, hungrier, more willing to take risks. His employees were loyal but aging. And Tom himself felt tired in a way that sleep could not fix. He had spent 40 years building something. And for what? To work until he died? To retire alone in Stuttgart, watching television in an empty apartment until his body gave out? One evening in March, Tom sat in his office after everyone had gone home and stared at a spreadsheet showing the company's finances. The business was worth about 720,000 euros. Not a fortune, but enough to live comfortably for the rest of his life, if he was careful. He thought of his father, who had worked in a factory until retirement and died of a heart attack 2 years later, Lynchers, without ever enjoying the life he had postponed for decades. Tom did not want that. He wanted something else, something warm, something alive. He had heard other German businessmen talk about retiring to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines. Lower living costs, beautiful weather, friendly people. At first, he had dismissed it as a fantasy, the kind of thing desperate divorced men did. But the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. He had no children tying him to Germany. No wife, no close family except a sister in Munich whom he saw once a year. His employees would manage. Several had expressed interest in buying the business if he ever wanted to sell. Over the next 3 months, Tom researched obsessively. He read expatriate forums, watched YouTube videos, studied visa requirements and living costs. Thailand kept rising to the top. Specifically Hua Hin, a coastal town south of Bangkok, known for being quieter and more family-oriented than Pattaya, and more affordable than Phuket. It had beaches, golf courses, good hospitals, and a sizable expatriate community. The process for a retirement visa seemed straightforward for someone with his financial profile. In June 2022, Tom made his decision. He found a buyer for the business, one of his senior employees, who had partnered with a small investment group. The sale price was 720,000 euros. After taxes and closing costs, Tom would have about 690,000 euros net, around 750,000 US dollars at the time. Enough to live very comfortably in Thailand for decades. He sold his apartment, sold his car, sold or donated most of his possessions. He kept 2 suitcases of clothing, some important documents, photographs from his marriage and of his parents, and his father's watch. Everything else, 40 years of accumulated belongings, went to auction or to charity. It felt liberating and terrifying at the same time, like jumping off a cliff and hoping there was water below. On September 15, 2022, Thomas Becker boarded a Lufthansa flight from Frankfurt to Bangkok. He was 64 years old, had euros in his bank account, and had absolutely no idea what he was getting himself into. The heat hit Tom the moment he stepped off the plane at Suvarnabhumi Airport, thick, humid heat that immediately fogged his glasses. He had expected it from his research, but experiencing it was different. By the time he had collected his luggage and found a taxi, his shirt was soaked with sweat despite the airport's air conditioning. The drive from Bangkok to Hua Hin took almost 3 hours through heavy traffic, then sprawling suburbs, and finally open highway lined with palm trees and small villages. Tom sat in the back seat of the taxi, watching Thailand roll past the window, feeling a mixture of excitement and surreal disbelief. 3 months earlier, he had been running a factory in Stuttgart. Now he was in Southeast Asia, starting over at 64. Was he brave or insane? He did not know. Hua Hin revealed itself gradually as they approached. First, the outskirts with construction sites and shopping centers. Then, the better-developed beach areas with hotels and restaurants. And finally, the older town center with its night market and fishing pier. Tom had booked 1 week at Sea Breeze, a small boutique hotel that several expatriate forums had recommended as a good base while searching for permanent accommodation. The hotel was charming, 8 rooms around a small pool, run by a middle-aged British-Thai couple. His room was simple but clean, with a balcony overlooking a busy street full of scooters and street vendors. Tom showered, changed into fresh clothes, and then simply stood on the balcony, watching the foreign life unfolding below. This was his world now. He had to learn how to live in it. The first days were overwhelming. Everything was different. The food, the language, the traffic, the sounds, the smells. Tom was a capable man, methodical and intelligent, but here he felt like a child who had to learn the simplest tasks. How to order food, how to take a tuk-tuk, how to negotiate prices, how to say no politely without offending anyone. Every interaction required effort and left him exhausted. But slowly he found his rhythm. He discovered restaurants where the staff spoke a little English. He learned basic Thai phrases. Sawadi crab, hello. Kop hun crab, thank you. My fet not spicy, please. He found a bank branch, used to expatriate clients, and opened an account. He began exploring the town, the long beach, the night market, the quieter streets away from the tourist center. Around the 5th day, he met a group of German retirees at a restaurant called Gerhard's Biergarten, an expatriate-run restaurant that served German food and beer. The men were mostly in their 60s and had lived in Hua Hin for several years. They were friendly and warned him about common traps: overpriced taxis, aggressive sellers, fake products. One of them, Klaus, a former engineer from Hamburg, offered to help him search for an apartment. Rents are reasonable if you know where to look, Klaus said. Between 15,000 and 30,000 baht a month for a decent place. That is around 400 to 800 euros. Stay away from the tourist areas. Too expensive, too loud. Look at the neighborhoods north of the town center. Quieter, more local, better prices. Tom followed Klaus's advice. They spent several days looking at apartments. Some were too dark, some too loud, some simply wrong. Then, they found a 2-story townhouse on a quiet side street, about 3 kilometers from the beach. 2 bedrooms, a small balcony, air conditioning, partially furnished. The landlady was an older Thai woman whose son translated for her. 20,000 baht per month, about 530 euros. Tom signed a one-year lease. For the first time since arriving, Tom felt settled. He had a place to live, a bank account, the beginning of a routine. He started imagining a future here. Peaceful mornings with coffee on the balcony, afternoons at the beach, evenings with the German retirees at the beer garden. It was not the life he had planned, but it was a life. Perhaps that could be enough. Then, on a Tuesday evening in early October, about 3 weeks after his arrival, Tom met Natcha. She worked behind the reception desk at the Seabreeze Hotel, where Tom had returned to pick up a few things he had left there while moving into his new apartment. Tom had barely noticed her during his first stay. She was one of several employees, efficient but unobtrusive. But that evening, she was alone at the front desk. And when he walked in, she looked up and smiled. "Mr. Tom, you come back to visit us." Her English was simple but clear, and her smile was warm. Tom felt seen in a way he had not felt in months. He explained that he was just picking up a few things, and she nodded understandingly. "You find nice apartment. You happy in Hua Hin?" They talked for a few minutes. Superficial things, the kind of conversation one has with strangers. But there was warmth in her manner, a genuine interest that felt different from the transactional full of tightness he had experienced in most service encounters. As he left, she said, "You come visit us again." "Yes, if we miss you." Tom thought about that as he walked home. It was probably just professional friendliness, the training of all hotel workers to make guests feel welcome. But part of him wanted to believe it was more. He was lonely in a way he had not admitted, not even to himself. The German retirees were friendly, but they were acquaintances, not friends. He had no one here to talk to, no one to whom he mattered. 2 days later, Tom went back to the Seabreeze, supposedly to ask the hotel owners for a restaurant recommendation. Natcha was at the reception desk again. She remembered his name and asked how he was settling into his new apartment. She recommended a nearby restaurant that served authentic Thai food. "Not spicy for foreigners," she said with a playful smile. "I tell them they make it mild for you." "Maybe you could show me how to order properly," Tom joked. She hesitated, then smiled. "Maybe one day. I work a lot, but maybe one day." It was nothing. It was everything. Tom left the hotel feeling 10 years younger. In the following weeks, Tom found reasons to stop by the Seabreeze. Sometimes Natcha was there, sometimes she was not. When she was there, they talked, short conversations that slowly became more personal. He learned that she was 29 years old and came from a small village in Nakhon Ratchasima province. She had worked in the hotel industry for 10 years, working her way up from housekeeping. She sent money home to support her mother and younger siblings. She was smart, hardworking, and funny, although her English was limited. Tom told her about his life, the business, the divorce, and his decision to come to Thailand. She listened attentively and asked thoughtful questions. When he mentioned the divorce, she gently touched his arm. "You good man. You deserve happy." It was a simple comment, but it struck Tom with unexpected force. How long had it been since someone had told him he deserved to be happy? Since someone had seen him as more than a bank account, or a business partner, or a problem? His ex-wife had stopped seeing him that way long before the divorce. His employees had respected him, but they had not loved him. He had spent 40 years being there for others, and in the end, no one had been there for him. At the end of October, Tom asked Natcha if she would have dinner with him. She agreed. They met at a small seafood restaurant on the beach, a place locals visited, not tourists. Natcha ordered for both of them in Thai and laughed softly at Tom's attempts to pronounce the dishes. They talked for 2 hours about their childhoods, his stories from Germany, and her dreams for the future. "What is your dream?" Tom asked. She hesitated. "I want own business. Maybe small guest house, like Seabreeze, but my own. I save money, but," she shook her head, "very expensive. Maybe impossible for me." Tom felt something tighten in his chest. Here was someone with ambition, dreams, concrete plans, real determination, qualities he admired, qualities that reminded him of his younger self when he was building his own business. "It is not impossible," he said gently. "With hard work, planning, maybe some help." She smiled sadly. Maybe one day. When they said goodbye that evening, she hugged him. It was brief, but Tom felt the warmth of her body through his shirt and smelled her shampoo, something fruity and sweet. He stood there after she left, touching the place where she had touched him, feeling like a teenager after his first date. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became more frequent. Dinners, walks on the beach, trips to the market, where Natcha helped him buy ingredients, and showed him how to cook simple Thai dishes. They laughed together, shared stories, and slowly developed the comfortable familiarity of intimacy. Natcha introduced him to her friend Plu, who ran a food stall at the night market. She took Tom to a temple and explained the Buddhist rituals. She became part of his life, filling an emptiness he had not known was so deep. The Germans at the Biergarten noticed the change. "You look happy," Klaus remarked one evening. "I think I am," Tom said, realizing it was true. Not everyone was pleased. Jürgen, a cynical former insurance agent who had lived in Thailand for 15 years, approached Tom one evening. "Be careful, my friend. These girls, they are good at what they do. They find lonely foreigners, act nice, make you feel special. Then comes the hook." Tom felt a flash of anger. "Natcha is not like that. That is what they all say," Jürgen said with a shrug. "Just be careful with your money." "Yes?" Tom ignored him. Jürgen was bitter, lonely, suspicious of everything and everyone. Natcha was different. She had never asked for money. She insisted on paying for her own meals. When Tom tried to give her gifts, she politely refused. "Too much," she would say. "You already nice to me. That enough." By the end of November, their relationship became physical. Tom was nervous. He was 64 and had not been with anyone since his divorce almost 10 years earlier. But Natcha was soft, patient, sensual, in a way that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with connection. Later, as she lay in his arms in his apartment, she said quietly, "I like you, Tom. You good man. You make me happy." Tom stroked her hair, his heart so full that it hurt. "You make me happy too." It was in that moment that he was completely lost. He loved her. For the first time since Enki, perhaps for the first time ever in this way, he loved someone completely, desperately, hopefully. He saw a future ahead of him, not just surviving in Thailand, but a life, a partnership, a purpose beyond himself. Natcha, if she felt something, did not say it, but she showed it in small things. The way she touched his face when she looked at him, The way she cuddled against him at night, the way she said, "Take care of yourself," every time they said goodbye. Tom told himself that was enough, that love did not always have to be spoken loudly, that actions mattered more than words. He was so busy convincing himself of this that he missed the warning signs, or perhaps he simply did not want to see them. In early December, about 3 months after Tom's arrival in Thailand, Natcha brought it up during dinner. They had spent the evening in his apartment, cooking together an attempt at pad thai that had turned out reasonably well. They drank wine on the balcony, watching scooters pass below and enjoying the cooler evening air. "Tom," Natcha said after a long silence, "I must tell you something." Her voice had a seriousness that alarmed Tom. "What is wrong?" She looked down at her hands. "I have opportunity. Business opportunity. But I not know what to do." Tom leaned forward. "Tell me," she explained slowly, her English stumbling but clear enough. A friend of her uncle owned land in Khao Takiab, a beach area about 10 kilometers south of Hua Hin. Excellent location, only 2 blocks from the beach, but currently undeveloped. The owner wanted to sell it. He needed cash for medical treatment. The price was 400,000 baht, about 10,000 euros. A bargain for the area. "My dream is small guest house," Natcha said. "This land, perfect. 4 rooms. Nice garden. Near beach. I could make good business," but she paused. "I do not have enough money. I saved 3 years, have only 100,000 baht. Not enough for land. Not enough for building." Tom felt something squeeze in his heart. Here was the woman he loved, with a legitimate dream and a concrete opportunity, held back only by the lack of capital. He knew that feeling. He had started his entire business with borrowed money, pushing the dream beyond the resources. But he had had what Natcha did not have: access to capital, to lenders who believed in him. "How much would you need?" Tom asked. "Total. I mean for everything." Natcha hesitated. "I calculate 400,000 for land, maybe 1.5 million for building small guest house, 4 rooms. Simple but nice. Furniture, permits, supplies, maybe 200,000 more. Total," she hesitated again, "maybe 2.1 million baht. That is," she fell silent, looking away. Tom calculated quickly. 2.1 million baht was about 52,000 euros. A substantial sum but not enormous. And for a small guest house in a good location in a growing tourism town, it could actually be a good investment, not just for Natcha, but for him too. He could be a partner in her dream, help her build something, be part of something beyond merely existing in loneliness. "I could help," Tom said. Natcha looked up sharply. "No, Tom. I not ask. I know you did not ask. I am offering." Tom reached for her hand. "Look, I have money. I lived a life in Germany and sold it to come here. And for what? To sit alone in an apartment, counting the years until I die. That is not what I want, Natcha. I want to build something. I want to be part of something with you." Tears formed in Natcha's eyes. "You so good to me, Tom, but that too much. I cannot accept so much money." "What if we were partners?" Tom said, the idea taking shape as he spoke. "Not just me giving you money. We become equal partners in the business. I invest the capital. You run the operations. You know the hotel business. You know Thailand. You speak the language. I have business experience, management skills, financial resources. Together, we could make something special. Natcha wiped her eyes. You really mean that? I mean it, Tom said, realizing that he did. This was not madness. This was opportunity. A chance not only to fulfill Natcha's dream, but his own, to build, to create, to have purpose. They spent the rest of the evening talking about it, planning scenarios. Natcha took out a notebook with rough figures she had calculated. Tom asked questions about market prices, occupancy rates, operating costs, competition. Her answers were thoughtful, based on years of experience in the hotel industry. This was not a fantasy. This was a real plan with real numbers. By the end of the evening, Tom agreed to invest 55,000 euros, slightly more than Natcha's initial estimate, to create a buffer for unexpected costs. They would be 50-50 partners with clear responsibilities. Natcha would manage the daily operations. Tom would oversee finances and strategy. Profits would be split equally. We do everything right, Tom said. Proper contracts, proper permits, everything legal and clear. I will find a lawyer who understands these things. Natcha nodded eagerly. Yes, everything right. I want you to feel safe, Tom. That important to me. They embraced, holding each other tightly. Tom felt something inside him open, not painfully, but liberatingly, like a frozen door, finally swinging free. He was not just a lonely old man waiting for death. He was a partner, a builder, someone's future. Thank you, Natcha whispered into his chest. You give me hope, Tom. You change my life. Tom stroked her hair, too moved to speak. He did not think about Jürgen's warning, echoing in his head. He did not think about the German retirees who told stories of Thai girlfriends who disappeared after receiving money. He thought only of Natcha, of her tears, her gratitude, her dream that was now also his dream. In Tom's defense, he tried to do everything properly. He found a lawyer through the German expatriate community, a Thai man named Pravit, who had studied law in Bangkok and specialized in foreign investments. Tom paid Pravit 2,000 euros to draft contracts that would protect his investment, clarify ownership structures, and ensure that everything was legal. Pravit asked questions that Tom found logical. Who would own the land? In Thailand, foreigners cannot directly own land, but they can own structures built on land or invest through Thai partners. Pravit recommended establishing a limited company. Natcha would be the majority owner because she was Thai. Tom would be a minority owner, but with contractual protections for his investment. Is that safe? Tom asked. As safe as things are here, Pravit said. Thailand is not Europe. There are more risks. But with proper contracts, proper documentation, proper permits, you should be protected. Should. The word should have worried Tom. But he wanted to believe. He needed to believe. Throughout December, things moved quickly. Natcha took Tom to see the land in Khao Takiab. It was perfect. A rectangular plot, about 200 square meters, slightly raised above the road, with palm trees and clean boundaries. The owner, an older man named Samsai, spoke no English, but Natcha translated. He showed papers. A shanote, the highest form of land title in Thailand, which meant the land was clearly surveyed and registered. Pravit reviewed the documents. The chanote is good, he said. Very clear. No dispute. Price is fair for the area. They completed the land purchase on December 20. Tom transferred 410,000 baht, 10,250 euros, to an account that Pravit had arranged for the transaction. The money went to some Sai. The land was transferred into Nacha's name. Tom had nothing tangible, only a contract stating that he was a 50% partner in the future business. "Is this normal?" Tom asked Pravit. "In Thailand? Yes. Foreigners cannot own land. You trust your partner. That is why contracts are important. Trust." Tom watched Nacha walk around the plot. She smiled wider than he had ever seen her smile, making plans, dreaming. Yes, he trusted her. Perhaps that was naive, but what was the alternative? To live alone, trust no one, risk nothing? That was not life. After the land purchase, construction began. Nacha had found a contractor, a man named K. Somkit, who had built several small hotels in Hua Hin. His quote for a 4-story guest house, 4 guest suites, a shared area, and a small pool was 1.5 million baht, about 37,000 euros. Construction time, 4 to 5 months. Tom met Somkit and inspected other projects he had completed. They were simple but solid. Exactly what they needed. He signed a contract. Chacha was thrilled. "We do it, Tom. We really build something." Tom spent Christmas with Nacha and her family in her village. It was modest. A small house with a corrugated metal roof. Chickens pecked in the yard. Nacha's mother smiled toothlessly, understood not a word Tom said, but treated him with warm hospitality. Nacha's siblings were shy but sweet. They ate simple food, drank cheap whiskey, and laughed, even though the language barrier made deeper conversation impossible. Tom gave Nacha's mother 5,000 baht, about 120 euros, as a gift. Nacha protested, but Tom insisted. "She is your family." "Now she is my family too," Nacha cried and hugged him tightly. "You so good, Tom. I so happy with you." Tom felt the same, honestly. This was the first Christmas, in years, that had not felt empty. He was part of something. He belonged. Construction began in early January 2023. Tom visited the site regularly, watching the foundation being poured, walls being built, the skeleton of his and Nacha's dreams slowly taking shape. Somkit seemed competent. The workers were diligent. Things were going well. Nacha calculated endless numbers. Operating costs, market prices, expected occupancy. "If we are 70% occupied, we make 30 to 40,000 baht per month profit," she explained. "That is 400, 500,000 per year." "Good. No, very good," Tom agreed. With those numbers, his investment would pay for itself in about 5 years, and after that, it would be income. Not huge, but solid, reliable enough to support them both comfortably. In February, there was a setback. Somkit said he needed additional funds. Material costs had risen. Some structural work was more complex than expected. He asked for another 200,000 baht, about 5,000 euros. Tom hesitated. Were these normal cost overruns, or was he being exploited? He asked Klaus, who had experience with construction. "In Thailand, always more expensive than the quote," Klaus said. "Inflation, material shortages, unexpected problems. 5,000 euros more for a construction project is actually not so terrible. But be careful. Set a limit." Tom told Somkit that this would be the last additional payment. Somkit agreed. Tom transferred the money. Construction continued. In March, There was another setback. The construction permits had to be renewed. Something about zoning, a new regulation, an administrative fee. Nacha explained it in broken English, frustrated by the bureaucracy. She said the fee was 50,000 baht, about 1,250 euros. Can we not continue without the permit? Tom asked. No, very dangerous, Nacha said. If we build without correct paper, government can stop and maybe tear everything down. We must be right. Tom paid the fee. He asked Pravit about it. Is this legitimate? Thai bureaucracy is complicated, Pravit said. Many fees, many regulations change often. Usually better to pay, avoid problems. The bills added up. Tom kept records. Land purchase, 10,250 euros. First construction quote, 37,000 euros. Additional construction costs, 5,000 euros. Permit fees, 1,250 euros. Lawyer fees, 500 euros. Various expenses, furniture, supplies, deposits, 3,000 euros. Total, 58,000 euros. More than the original 55,000 he had agreed to, but not crazily more. Things went over budget, especially construction projects. That was normal. He told himself it was normal. By the end of April, the building was almost finished. 4 beautiful suites, each with its own bathroom, air conditioning, and balcony. The common area was open and airy, with a small pool. The furniture was simple but decent. It looked like a real guest house. Professional, inviting. Nacha was beside herself with joy. We open in May. I make website, list on booking.com, start social media. We do this, Tom. We really build something. They celebrated that evening, drinking champagne at the construction site, watching the sunset over the almost finished building. Tom felt something swelling in his chest. Pride, perhaps, or purpose. Or simply the plain joy of realization. We need to give it a name, Nacha said. What do you think? Tom thought. How about 2 horizons, for both of us? Your future and mine coming together. Nacha kissed him. Perfect. It was perfect. Everything was perfect. Tom should have been frozen in that exact moment, before the truth began to rot. Because 1 week later, when Tom came to the construction site to meet Samkit about final details, no one was there. No workers, no Samkit, no Nacha. The building still, half finished, half abandoned. Doors dangled from hinges, windows had no glass. Tom called Samkit's phone. Turned off. He called Nacha. No answer. He sent a text message. No answer. He waited 1 hour, then 2. Eventually, Nacha called back. Tom, sorry, I'm busy with family. What is going on? No one is at the site, Tom said. Where is Samkit? What happened? Silence then. I not know. I call him. He not answer me also. Maybe problem with workers. Can you come to the site? I cannot today. Tomorrow, yes. I find out what problem is. But the next day, Nacha was still unavailable, and the day after that, suddenly she was always busy. Family problems, doctor visits, work crises. Tom felt something cold begin in his stomach. He went to the provincial office to check the construction permits. That was when the truth began to leak through. The official looked at the documentation Nacha had given him and shook his head. This is not real permit, he said in broken English. Fake. You have big problem. Tom's heart turned cold. What do you mean fake? The official pointed to different elements, Wrong stamps, wrong signatures, fake reference numbers. This land is, he hesitated, searching for words. Not properly registered for building. And this permit is not from our office. Fake. Tom felt the ground sway beneath him. But I paid for these permits. But, the official shrugged sadly. Sorry. Someone cheat you. Tom staggered out of the office. His mind raced. He called Pravit, the lawyer. The permits are fake, he said, his voice breaking. What does that mean? I need to see, Pravit said. Come to my office. Bring all documents. At Pravit's office, it got worse. The lawyer examined the contracts, the land title, the construction permits. His face darkened with each document. Mr. Tom, he finally said, I am afraid this is all not legitimate. What do you mean, not legitimate? The land title is fake. The land in Khao Takiab does not belong to Ms. Nacha. It actually belongs to a government office. Conserved coastal land. Not for sale. The Samsai who sold it, he does not exist or he was a fraud. The building permits are fake. The contracts I drafted, I must verify whether the signatures are real. Tom could not breathe. But you checked the documents. You'd said they were legitimate. They looked legitimate, Pravit said, defensive now. Forgeries in Thailand are very good. I did due diligence, but obviously, he fell silent. The unspoken accusation hung between them. Pravit had failed too, whether through incompetence or complicity. Tom would never know for sure. What should I do? Tom whispered. We go to the police, Pravit said. File a fraud complaint. Try to trace where the money went. Who is behind this? They went to the police. Tom gave a statement, presented all his documents, and explained the whole story. The police officer listened politely and took notes. Then he said, We will investigate. But you should know, in Thailand, fraud cases like this are very difficult to solve. Money usually gone. People disappear. What about Nacha? Tom asked. Her phone, her work at Seabreeze, her family. We will ask, the officer said. But probably all false. Name false, family fake, hotel work may be real, but she likely already gone. Tom felt something inside him break. How much? How much have I lost? He calculated together with Pravit. It was not just the initial 58,000 euros. There were more expenses Tom had forgotten, or not tracked precisely. Extra material payments to Somkid, 3,000 euros. Emergency fees for permits, 2,000 euros. Money to Nacha's family, 1,500 euros. Smaller things. Gifts, meals, rent for an office that never existed, 2,500 euros. Total, 67,000 euros. 67,000 euros, about 10% of his entire life's wealth, gone in 6 months. Tom went back to the plot in Khao Takiab. The half-finished buildings stood there, a skeleton of his dreams. He stood there for a long time, staring at it. Then, with trembling hands, he called Nacha's number. She answered. Her voice was different, colder, more distant. Tom, is it you? He whispered. Is that even your real name? A short pause. Does it matter? I loved you, Tom said, his voice breaking. I thought you were real. I was real, said the woman he had called Nacha. Real enough for you to give me 60,000 euros. 67, Tom corrected automatically, then realized the absurdity. He laughed, a high, strange sound. You did not even track the exact amount. Why would I? Her voice was uninterested. Now, Tom, you were nice. Really nicer than some. But you knew what this was. Deep inside. You knew, Tom whispered. No, I did not. You wanted to believe that a young girl loved you. A 64-year-old man alone with money. You wanted to believe that your money did not matter, that it was really you. Because that is what you wanted. But Tom, it was always the money. It is always the money. She hung up. Tom stood in the silence, the phone still pressed to his ear. Somewhere, a bird called. Scooters passed on the road. Life continued, indifferent to his collapse. He had lost 67,000 euros, but that was not the worst part. The worst part was realizing that she was right. Deep inside, on a level he could not admit, he had known. The warnings had all been there. Jürgen's cynicism, Klaus' cautious questions, the subtle inconsistencies in Natcha's stories, the too perfect coincidences, the too fast romance. He had seen all the signs. He had simply chosen not to believe them, because believing was less painful than accepting the truth, that he was fundamentally alone, that love had forgotten him, that no one wanted a 64-year-old divorced German man except for what he had in his bank account. Tom had worked 40 years for that money. He had lost it in less than one. And as he stood there looking at the skeleton of his fraud, he realized that it was not just the money that had been stolen. It was his ability to hope, to trust, to believe that redemption was possible in his final years. Natcha, or whoever she was, had not just stolen his money. She had stolen his future. The days after the discovery were a blur. Tom remembers fragments, sitting in his apartment, staring at walls, lacking even the motivation to get up. He barely ate, slept in sporadic, restless bursts. His phone rang. Klaus, other Germans from the Biergarten, Pravit, with updates about the police investigation that was going nowhere. Tom did not answer. The police discovered that Natcha was an invented identity. Her real name, unknown. The address she had given did not exist. Her employment at Seabreeze had been real, but only for 2 months. She had quit shortly after meeting Tom. The hotel owners barely remembered her. Nice woman, good worker, just left one day, they said. The family Tom had met in the village were probably actors, paid for the performance. The entire operation had been orchestrated, professional, carefully designed. Tom was not her first victim, and he would not be her last. The contractor Somkit disappeared as well. His phone number was disconnected. His office, which Tom had never personally visited, did not exist at the address provided. Pravit, the lawyer, was useless, either incompetent or possibly part of the fraud, though that was never proven. He refunded Tom 1/3 of his legal fees and then disappeared from Tom's life. The money was gone, transferred through several accounts, withdrawn in cash, impossible to trace. The police's half-hearted investigation led nowhere. We do what we can, they said. But in Thailand, with limited resources and hundreds of similar cases, Tom's loss was just another statistic. At first, Tom tried to move on. He told himself he could recover, save, rebuild. He still had around 623,000 euros left. Enough to survive for decades if he was careful. The guest house was a lost investment, but not fatal. Life went on. But reality was more complicated. Tom had not only lost money in the guest house project. During his time with Natcha, he had spent generously. Fine dinners, gifts, trips, enjoying the feeling of being a successful man who could impress someone. All those small expenses added up. And then there were the ongoing legal costs as he tried to recover his money, and his own living costs in Hua Hin, which were higher than he had initially imagined. By June 2023, 9 months after arriving in Thailand, Tom had spent around 90,000 euros. His remaining balance was 600,000 euros. Still substantial, but also terrifying. Worse than the financial hole was the psychological one. Tom could not sleep. When he slept, he dreamed of Natcha. Her smile, her touch, the way she had looked at him as if she truly saw him. Then he would wake up, and the dreams would shatter against reality. She had never existed. The woman he loved was an invention, a construct designed to separate him from his money. The shame was paralyzing. How could he have been so stupid? He was an educated man, a successful businessman, someone who had survived 40 years in a competitive industry through intelligence and caution. And yet, he had fallen for the oldest scam in the world, a romance scam carried out by a woman who was probably working a dozen men like him at the same time. He could not face the other Germans at the beer garden. Had Jürgen not warned him? Had Klaus not hinted that he should be careful? They would know. They would look at him with pity, or worse, with the kind of contempt men reserved for other men foolish enough to be deceived. Tom isolated himself. He stopped attending meetings, answered no calls, left his apartment only late at night to buy groceries. He existed, but without purpose. The days melted into weeks, weeks into months. His savings continued to shrink. Life was not cheap, even in Thailand, when one sank into depression. He paid rent for an apartment where he lived in a dark trance. He ordered takeaway food, too depressed to cook. He did not drink heavily, but regularly, to take the edge off reality. By November 2023, Tom had spent another 30,000 euros. His balance was 570,000 euros. The mathematics was merciless. He was bleeding money, with no income, no purpose, no plan. The German retirees eventually found him. Klaus knocked on his door one evening and insisted until Tom let him in. The appearance of his apartment shocked Klaus. Piles of takeaway containers, dirty clothes, curtains drawn against the sunlight. "My God, Tom," Klaus said. "What are you doing?" Tom had no answer. Klaus cleaned up, forced Tom to shower, and took him to the beer garden. The other Germans were there, Jürgen, Friedrich, and a few others. They fell silent when Tom walked in. His appearance was probably shocking. He had lost 15 pounds and had not showered in days. "We heard what happened," Friedrich said gently. "With the guest house? With your girlfriend?" Tom stared at his hands. "How much have you heard?" "Enough," Klaus said. Rumors spread in the expatriate community. "We wanted to give you space, but—" He looked at Tom's exhausted form. "You cannot keep going like this, Tom." "What does it matter?" Tom said, his voice flat. "I lost everything." "You did not lose everything," Friedrich said. "You lost money. You were deceived. It is terrible, but you are not the first, and you will not be the last. You are alive, Tom. You still have resources, time, a life you can live." "For what?" Tom said. "To sit alone and wait to die." The group was silent. Then Jürgen, the cynic, spoke. "Look, Tom, I told you to be careful. You did not listen. That is not my fault. But it is also not your job to punish yourself for being human." Tom looked up. Human, you wanted to be loved, Jurgen said, his voice surprisingly gentle. It is the simplest and most complicated need people have. She is good at hooking into that. That does not make you stupid. That makes you human. Tom felt tears burning. She took everything from me. No, Klaus said. She took money from you. Money can be replaced. Maybe not all of it, but some. What you cannot leave is time, and you are wasting it by drowning in self-pity. It was harsh, but true. Tom wiped his eyes. What am I supposed to do? Live, Friedrich said simply. Not for her. Not despite her. Just live. Find something that gives you purpose. Maybe warn others like you. In the following weeks, Tom slowly began to come out of his depression. It was not sudden, not dramatic, just small steps. He began showering again, eating properly, opening the curtains, walking, speaking with the other Germans at the beach. Friedrich introduced him to a small group of German retirees who ran an informal advisory group for newcomers in Hua Hin. They met twice a month and shared advice about visas, healthcare, apartment hunting, and avoiding scams. They needed someone who could speak about romance, scams. Someone who could explain the signs. I do not want to be the poster boy for naivety, Tom said. You are not, Friedrich said. You are a survivor, and your story could save someone else. Tom began attending the meetings. At first, he only listened. Other Germans shared advice, war stories, warnings. Then, at one meeting, a newly arrived German retiree asked about investing in a Thai business with a girlfriend. The room went silent. Tom found himself speaking. Do not do it, he said simply. But we have been together for 6 months, the man protested. She is different. She is educated, has a real job, does not ask for money. That is what I thought too, Tom interrupted. Mine was educated, worked in a real hotel, never directly asked for money. Instead, she presented an opportunity, a partnership, a dream we could build together. It all seemed legitimate. Contracts, permits, professional contractors. I did due diligence. I hired a lawyer. And I still lost everything. He told his story, not all of it. He could not bear that. But enough. The room was silent when he finished. The newly arrived German looked shaken. Thank you, he said quietly. I think I need to be more careful. Tom nodded. Perhaps his suffering could at least prevent someone else's. 18 months have passed since Bam disappeared. Thomas Becker is now 66 years old, living in a single room in an aging building in Hua Hin, surviving on his pension and what remains of his life savings. He works part-time with the German Expatriate Advisory Group, helping newcomers navigate the complexities of Thailand, warning them about scams, sharing his story as a cautionary tale. The construction site in Khao Takiab stands abandoned. The actual landowner filed legal claims, but the cost of demolition, compared to the value of the building, created a bureaucratic stalemate. It simply stands there, slowly decaying, a monument to Tom's naivety. Sometimes he walks past it, though his friends tell him not to. He looks at the building that should have been his future and feels nothing. The pain has dulled into a constant ache, like an old injury that flares up in bad weather. The police never found Bam. The money never came back. The legal bills consumed whatever buffer Tom still had. He is not destitute. His pension ensures basic survival, but the life he had imagined, the peaceful retirement by the sea, the partnership and purpose, all of that is gone. Sometimes, late at night, Tom lies on his thin mattress, listening to neighbors through paper-thin walls, and thinks about the decisions that led him here. Selling the business, coming to Thailand, trusting BAM, investing everything. At what point did it become inevitable? Could he have seen the truth if he had looked harder? Or was he doomed from the moment he walked into Sea Breeze and saw her smile? The worst part is not the money. Money is only numbers, paper, an abstract concept. The worst part is the betrayal of hope itself. Tom had allowed himself to believe that at 64, after a life of loneliness and sacrifice, he could still have happiness, that someone could see value in him beyond his bank account, that he could build something meaningful in his final years. BAM, or whoever she really was, took that hope and weaponized it. She studied him, found his weaknesses, his desires, his wounds, and exploited them with surgical precision. Every smile had been calculated. Every touch had been transactional. Every "I love you" had been a lie told in the service of theft. She had not just stolen his money. She had stolen his ability to trust, to hope, to believe in human connection. Tom knows he will never fully recover. Not financially. At 66, there is no rebuilding a fortune. Not emotionally. How do you trust again after such complete betrayal? He now exists in a strange in-between space, neither fully alive nor dead, simply surviving each day until the next. The only meaning he has found is in warning others. At the advisory meetings, when he tells his story, he sees the shock on the faces of newly arrived Germans, the way they hold their partners a little less tightly afterward, the seed of doubt planted. He hates being that seed. But doubt is better than destruction. If there is one thing Tom wants people to understand, it is this. The scam does not look like a scam. It looks like opportunity, like partnership, like love. The person deceiving you does not act suspicious or greedy or obvious. She acts exactly like someone who truly cares about you. That is what makes it work. That is what makes it devastating. Tom had worked 40 years to earn 690,000 euros. He lost 610,000 of it in 8 months. The mathematics of it, the exchange rate of time into money, into betrayal, still makes no sense to him. Perhaps it never will. He sometimes thinks of BAM, wonders where she is, what she is doing, whether she ever thinks of him. Probably not. He was just another job, another payday, another foolish foreign man who thought he could buy love in paradise. She has probably moved on to her next target, playing the same role, telling the same lies, wearing the same mask of affection and sincerity. Tom hopes that man, whoever he is wiser than he was, that he sees through the performance, that he keeps his money safe. But Tom knows he probably will not, because the scam is too good, too well made, too emotionally resonant. It promises everything lonely men want: connection, purpose, partnership, love. And people, when confronted with the possibility of no longer being alone, will believe almost anything. That is what Tom learned in Thailand. Not about Thai culture or Southeast Asian business practices, or even romance scams specifically. He learned about himself, about his own desperate loneliness, his need to be needed, his willingness to ignore reality in favor of hope. And that is the most devastating knowledge of all. He worked 40 years for that money and lost it in less than one. The mathematics still makes no sense. perhaps it never will. Thank you for watching. If stories like Thomas's have opened your eyes to these devastating romance scams, please subscribe to this channel. Every story shared is a warning that could save someone else. Your support helps me continue this important work. Stay alert, stay safe, and never invest more than you can afford to lose. Especially your heart.